Hello, this is Catholic Dad signing in for episode number 22. Helmets, do they work and are they effective? Um, this is a prickly topic for most people because everybody wraps their kid in bubble wrap when they leave the door. But this is one of the generational things that I think it bears thinking upon. When I was a kid, virtually 100% of kids rode bicycles. When I was a kid, nobody thought it was a dangerous activity or it had any intrinsic danger to it. We used to just go out and ride bicycles, and nobody cared. They encouraged us to do it. And nobody ever even said wear a bicycle helmet. But nowadays, people say, is bicycle riding inherently dangerous? And they would say, well, yeah. And then you say, would you ever let your kid ride a bicycle without a helmet? And they say, no. Well, what the heck? Those are the same people that used to ride bicycle helmets or buy bicycles without a helmet on, and pretty much everybody made it through childhood. So I don't fully understand that line of reasoning. But nonetheless, bicycle helmets, let's think about them. Not bicycle helmets, helmets in general. Let's think about them for a second. Do they protect your head from intracranial injury? And my line of reasoning, well, my argument is I don't really know. Okay, it hasn't been proven one way or to the other in my mind. But I do know football players get 40% more injuries to their brain than rugby players. And in both sports, both are big and strong and tough. But the football players have the pads and the helmets on, so that makes you go, perhaps they're not so protective. So why would I think helmets aren't so protective? Number one, you have to understand what causes intracranial injury. Like bad, fatal intracranial injury. I'm a radiologist. I've worked in level 1 trauma centers, and I've seen thousands and thousands of intracranial head injuries. Intracranial injury is not an impact phenomenon. Like essentially, if you take a hammer and you whack somebody in the head, a helmet would protect you from that, but that wouldn't hurt your brain if you had a helmet on, right? And the reason why is because an intracranial injury is not an impact phenomenon, it's a deceleration phenomenon. And so what actually hurts your brain and tears the neurons, gives you a diffuse axonal injury or concussion, right, is when your brain's moving at a high rate of speed and it suddenly stops. That's what gives you intracranial injury. And is it your head hitting the pavement that gives you the intracranial injury? And the answer is no. Actually, it's not. It's the brain hitting the inside of the skull, bouncing back and forth, that gives you the intracranial injury and tears the neurons. It's actually the inside of your skull that creates the damage to the brain, not the outside of your skull. And so therefore, to decrease intracranial injury, you have to actually decrease the deceleration forces of your brain. That's how you do it. And also, to decrease it, you also have to avoid hitting your head. Now, let's think about the premise of a helmet. A helmet put your helmet on, right? Big helmet. Makes your head bigger, doesn't it? Right? It also makes it heavier. And so, let's think about this now for a second. If you have a bigger, heavier head, are you more or less likely to strike it on the ground when you fall? And you can't argue with this. You are more likely to strike your head on the ground if your head's bigger and heavier. There's no getting around it. And if you fall, when you fall on the ground and you don't have a helmet on or anything, the human's body, it pulls its shoulders up, it tucks its head forwards, and it strengthens its shoulders. And that's a reflex, and that reflex is designed to protect your head. Now, let's just say you did this and you turtle up like that and you try not to hit your head on the ground. Now throw a big helmet on your head. You're far more likely, if you land on your shoulder, to smack your head on the ground than you are without a helmet on. Because even if you land on your shoulder like this, you're not even able to strike your head on the ground unless you have a helmet on. Oh, well, anyway, so here's the other thing. So the head decelerates, right? And if you put a helmet on, you have about that much less space for your head to decelerate, for your brain to decelerate when you fall down, because your head's that much bigger. And therefore, by definition, if you strike your head on the ground with a helmet on, you have higher deceleration forces and higher impulse forces. The other thing is, your head is also now about a half a pound heavier. If you have, let's say, an 8-pound head, right, and you put another half a pound on it, you make your head, let's say it's 0.8 pounds, you make it 10% heavier. Is your head, when it's 10% heavier, is it going to decelerate as quickly? No, it's not, because force equals mass times acceleration. Acceleration and mass have to be inversely related. So therefore, the more mass you put on the head, the less deceleration that you have, and therefore the harder you're going to strike your head on the ground once you finally do. So it's simple physics, people, honestly. And I think it's proven. Rugby players get less head injuries than football players. Now, here's the other thing to think about. because industry is very good at selling things to people. If you wanted to prove to me that helmets saved lives, this is what you do. You take a crash test dummy, you'd put a helmet on it and put some accelerometers in its brain and then throw it off of bicycles. That's what you would do. And if you did that, you would prove that you had less deceleration of the brain with the helmet on or more deceleration of the brain. You would. It's a very easy study to do. Go look it up on Google. You'll never find that study exists. But the fact of the matter is, I know, because I work in medicine, that that study does exist. When industry tries to prove something, when industry wants to sell something to somebody, they always do the studies that make the most sense. Now, why do those studies not exist? And the reason has to be this, because they've never proven an effect that would support the production and sales of helmets. That's why. There's no other way. I mean, we do it in medicine all the time, and anytime anybody gets like something with that much significance to it in a study, they publish it and try to sell these drugs to everybody. You know, that's the way it works. And so that's just something to think about. Do helmets work? I don't really know. I mean, I do know if you're walking along and an icicle falls on your head and you have a helmet on, yeah, that's going to help because that's an impact injury. But if you whack your head on the ground as hard as you can, it's not going to stop your concussion. It's not going to stop your diffuse axonal injury. And I think football is the perfect example of that. Far more concussions with people with helmets on in contact sports than people without helmets on, say in rugby and stuff like that. So there's also a pretty good study out there that, you know, since I was a kid, a lot less kids ride bicycles than they used to. But the amount of intracranial injuries are increasing. But so what's changed? I mean, are the bikes getting higher, faster, and whatever else? No. What has changed, the one definite change is more people are wearing helmets these days. So there you go. It's just a question. You can actually research it if you want. And you can think about it a heck of a lot more. There's no way a bigger, heavier head strikes the ground less and with less force. And so that's what I say. It just makes sense to me. And I know I'm a weirdo for saying it, but this is Catholic Dad. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Please like or subscribe. And there you go. Pray the rosary and try to get the confession. Thank you and have a nice night.